Are Ford and GM about to ditch electric vehicles? Despite efforts, they're struggling to sell EVs, sparking concerns. Who will win in this car industry showdown? Dive into the electrifying debate stirring up excitement and anxiety among EV enthusiasts and skeptics alike. These big car companies have already lost over $5 billion on electric cars, and to make matters worse, there have been thousands of complaints from loyal customers about EVs catching fire and causing accidents. Finally, Ford and GM are starting to listen to their customers and go against the political pressure to push EVs. Can you believe it? The Biden government actually forced them to sell more EVs by threatening to hit them with massive fines if they didn't comply. GM's CEO, Mary Barra, even made a huge mistake that could have led to GM shutting down forever. But now, the big two car makers are standing up for themselves. So what's going on here? Are EVs really a scam? Why would GM's CEO do something that could ruin her own company? And why is the government pushing so hard for EVs when people seem hesitant to buy them? Let's take a closer look. Last year, when European governments started banning gas cars, the Biden administration followed suit. They told Ford, GM, and Stellantis that they had to sell more EVs. In fact, they even set a rule saying that by 2032, 7 out of every 10 cars sold should be electric. That's a big jump from where we are now, considering only about 7% of cars today are EVs. This move scared a lot of customers and made the car makers really mad. And get this, if people don't start buying more EVs, the government could hit the car makers with a whopping $14 billion fine. No wonder Ford, GM, and Stellantis are sweating bullets over this. But here's the thing. Switching from gas-powered cars to electric ones isn't easy. It's not just a matter of popping in a new battery. It's a massive overhaul of the entire system. And it's got the car makers worried about losing money. After all, gas cars bring in the big bucks, while EVs don't seem to be as profitable. Meanwhile, the United Auto Workers Union is also concerned about what this shift to electric cars could mean for jobs. Both Ford and GM have already laid off thousands of employees to save money, and now they're worried that even more jobs could be at risk. And just when you thought things couldn't get any crazier, Stellantis CEO Carlos Tavares dropped a bombshell that shocked the entire industry. There are several reasons why people are avoiding EVs lately. Some say they're just too expensive. Others struggle to find a place to charge them at home. Then there's the eternal wait at public charging stations, which can be frustrating. To make matters worse, Ford had to recall a massive 35,000 of their Mustang Mach-E EVs. That's right, a whopping 35,000. Turns out, these sleek electric rides have a problem with their high-voltage battery main contactors overheating, which can lead to a complete loss of driving power. This isn't a small issue either. It's a big deal because it comes after a previous recall in June 2022, where Ford tried to fix the problem with a software update, but it didn't work. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration had to step in and start investigating in August. Now Ford is going all out with the recall, not just tinkering with software, but replacing the high-voltage battery junction box for the extended range vehicles. And it's not just about the recalls for Mustangs. Ford is also recalling more than 1.8 million Explorer vehicles due to windshield issues. Imagine driving down the highway and suddenly, part of your car decides to take flight. That's what could happen because the A-pillar trim clips weren't assembled properly, turning them into a flying hazard that could cause a crash. Ford's recent actions are part of a larger trend. They've had the most recalls last year, and they're not slowing down. Just earlier this year, they had to recall nearly 113,000 F-150 trucks because they might roll away on their own. Now, let's talk about what Stellantis CEO Carlos Tavares said in a recent interview. He's not a fan of EVs. He thinks they're too expensive and could end up crippling the middle class. He's not worried about poor sales. He's worried about the middle class getting crushed by the push for EVs. This is a big deal because Stellantis is behind brands like Jeep and Ram. Tavares dropped a bombshell at the Freedom of Mobility Forum, saying we might not have enough raw materials to build EVs. Toyota's chairman warned about this years ago, but no one listened. As raw materials like lithium and nickel get depleted, the supply chain suffers, driving prices even higher. But some people, like GM's CEO, Mary Barra, aren't listening. This situation has an international spy vibe because a lot of EV supplies come from China, and they're playing hardball with export bans. This could set the stage for a market crash, with EV prices potentially skyrocketing. But here's the thing. We're trying to swap out 1.3 billion gas-guzzling cars for shiny new EVs. However, Tavares is asking the million-dollar question, do we even have enough lithium for all these batteries? The situation over at Stellantis is pretty rough right now. Remember that big strike by the UAW? Well, it ended with workers getting a pay raise, which is good for them, but not so good for Stellantis. Their profits took a nosedive, and they're gearing up for a tough 2024. There are all sorts of problems looming, from people wanting more electric cars to competition from China and tensions between countries. Now let's talk about General Motors. There's some scary news floating around that they might shut down. Can you believe it? And guess who might be behind this? Their own CEO. You see, the electric car market hasn't been doing so well lately. But despite that, GM made this huge $19 billion deal with LG to get all the stuff they need to make batteries. They want to build what they're calling the biggest battery factory in America, right in Tennessee. That's a big goal, right? But here's where things get interesting. While GM is busy dreaming big about electric cars, not many people are actually buying them. Their sales dropped a whopping 24% in just one quarter. That's a huge drop. And when you compare that to Tesla's sales, it's like GM's electric cars are just a drop in the ocean. And it gets worse. There have been labor strikes too. These strikes hit GM's earnings hard, like really hard. They lost about $800 million because of it. At one point, they were losing about $200 million every week. Can you imagine that? Because of all this, GM had to slow down making some of their electric cars, like the Equinox E, Silverado EV, and GMC Sierra EV. It's like they had to press pause on their own game. And the electric cars they did manage to sell? Well, most of them were the Chevy Bolt EV and EUV, which are actually going away soon. So, things aren't looking too good for the GM. But wait, there's more drama. Mary Barra, GM's CEO, is sticking to her guns and not lowering the prices of their electric cars. It's like she's ignoring all the problems and just doing her own thing. And don't even get me started on GM's self-driving car project, Cruise. It's been a headache, costing them a whopping $2.7 billion last year. But there's a glimmer of hope. The U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, the folks who keep our air clean, came up with new rules to make cars less polluting. They want cars to be 56% cleaner by 2032. That's a big deal. And while they're not saying everyone has to switch to electric cars, it kind of seems like that's the direction things are headed. About 2/3 of new cars will need to be electric to meet those targets. But guess what? Automakers aren't too happy about these new rules. They're saying it's too much, too soon. GM, for example, wants to stick to a 50% electric car target by 2030. And then there's Nissan and Honda, acting all shy about their electric car goals. Even General Motors and Ford are backing out, saying they need more time to make better gas cars instead of just focusing on electric ones. So, what do you think? Are politicians pushing too hard for electric cars? Let's chat about it in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for all the latest AI news.